Now let's shift our attention now to the war between Russia and Ukraine. But just before that, let's inform our audience that we're breaking away from our regular programming to the transmission of an event in Abuja. Our programs continue on our UK channel Sky 534, while our viewers in Nigeria can continue watching the news and other regular programs on YouTube. Stay with us. Now let's shift our attention to the war between Russia and Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin says Russia has a stock of powerful new missiles ready to be used. The statement comes a day after his country fired a new ballistic missile at the Ukrainian city of Dnipro. We have details in this report.
In a TV address, the Russian leader Vladimir Putin said his country's Oreshnik missile cannot be intercepted and it flies at 10 times the speed of sound. He has ordered them to be put into production. President Putin maintains that the use of the missile was in response to Ukraine's use of Storm Shadow and Atakins. He has pledged to carry out more tests in combat conditions with his country's Oreshnik missiles. Russia carried out a strike on Ukraine's city of Dnipro Thursday with the missile, which triggered explosions that went on for 3 hours. It was described as unusual by eyewitnesses. The attack capped a week of escalation in the war that also saw Ukraine firing US and British missiles into Russia for the first time.
It was about Russian tanks firing directly at the buildings of our Ukrainian nuclear
The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is calling for a serious response by world leaders to make President Putin feel the real consequences of his actions. His country is also asking Western partners for updated defense systems. On the flip side, the United States expects thousands of North Korean troops converging in Russia to enter into combat against Ukraine soon. That's according to Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin. The Chief Press Secretary of the White House, Karine Jean-Pierre, also commented on the position of the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, on the current escalation of the war between Russia and Ukraine.
I'll just reflect on something that the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, said earlier this week, which was the major escalation we're seeing is that Russia has gone to another country from another part of the world. North Korea brought in thousands of their troops to the front lines and have added them into this war. This is a significant change and one that we warned the Russians about before they did it. We continue to talk to our allies and partners about this, and as it relates to any operations on the ground, this is something for the Ukrainians to speak to directly.
About 10,000 North Korean soldiers are reported to be based in the Russian border region of Kursk, where they are being integrated into Russian formations.
And for more on the war between Russia and Ukraine, global affairs analyst Kunle Falowo joins me from the United States. Kunle, good to have you join us on the war now. Right, so we're witnessing and seeing key moments in this war that no one would have imagined. Does it seem as though the trajectory of the war has shifted in Ukraine's favor amidst Russia's promise to use a new missile?
Most definitely, we're seeing so many changes in the war and how it's been implemented. However, nothing has really changed based on the fact that people are still dying. There's so much colossal effect, and in a sense, Ukrainians and Russians are losing thousands and millions of property, and most importantly, the lives of those that are continually dying. And there's no amount of reconstruction and commiseration that could void that or bring back the lost ones of their loved ones. But interestingly, things are going horribly bad for both sides, I would say. at this point, there shouldn't be any victor or any celebration because it's really far from over. And I would say that it's just unfortunate because we had anticipated a quick resolution to this crisis, but uh, it's dragging, and at the end of the day, people are just losing other loved ones, which is very unfortunate at this point.
And there is a concern about this turning into a global war. I mean, Russian missiles could potentially give them an upper hand in the conflict, allowing them to launch more precise and devastating attacks on Ukrainian targets. But how much of a concern is it for you, should this be to the West amidst an impending Trump term?
It should be worrying for every side. Now let's look at the Trump promise. He had promised that he was going to come in and hypothetically wave a magical wand that's going to end the war in no time. That is an interesting way to look at it, and expectations are really high. Now, aside from that, there are some other concerns in some other quarters from Trump's people and from Trump associates. There are no possibility of a peace between Russia and Ukraine. They might not be interested in that, particularly Trump might not be interested in doing that. That's number one. Secondly, we're also looking at possibility an escalation because Biden, the current U.S. president, has given access to the Ukrainian side to use the much needed long missiles, and that will give Ukraine the upper hand in some way. This has really angered Vladimir and his allies, and that he is to make, feels like he's able to accomplish his mission. Now the thing part is this also be a strong foreign presence on the side of the United States because we're having a new administration, and it's a guarantee that there will be policy formulation that will, be a swift change to what we currently have. Now, we know that there's a lot of funds that's being distributed and being shared, that's been approved by Biden administration to Ukrainians to continue to defend themselves. Now, when Mr. Trump goes in, we're not certain, and there's no guarantees that this will continue, and there's no guarantee that this will end, but there seems to be some promises at different quarters that Trump will make it happen. So, and then when you look at the other side, the United Kingdom, for example, they're also promising to provide additional support in forms of finances and ammunition for Ukrainians to defend themselves on that side. Now, if you look at some staunch allies of the Russians, like the North Korean leader, having to give manpower to the Russians. So this is a serious escalation and a serious turning point, which is meaning that the war is unfortunately going to another era where we're having additional countries become heavily invested in it, and we're not even hearing about possible resolution. So again,
that brings me to my next question. It remains to be seen how much of an impact sanctions will actually have on Russia in that sense. But with the war going global, we're looking at the potential alliance between other nations as a way of, posing a form of security for themselves.
So with the Western allies and particularly the European Union, we're seeing that one of the major concerns that they had was if Mr. Putin and his allies will be able to carry on and annex or claim victory over Ukraine, a supposedly independent democratic society. If Mr. Putin will be able to do that, there is no guarantees that he wouldn't feel like he needs to conquer some other European country, and that would destabilize the entire Europe. And these are some of the major concerns when you're seeing that Mr. Putin would, single-handedly invade a country, which is independence. So
Right.
that is a concern, and that is why they want to continue to support the Ukrainian side, so there could be victory on their side, and that will kind of safeguard some other European countries. But then again, it's going to a very sorry mood where some other countries are supporting Russia, and the Western allies are also backing Ukraine. So this is more like a proxy war, and the only way is to find a lasting solution in form of a mediation, and that would be the only solution to this crisis. So until then, we're looking forward to some policy changes and shifting come 2025, and believe it or not, it will be a diabolical and a momentous change come 2025 with the Trump era coming into full force.
Right on, until then, we will be looking towards some policy changes like you've mentioned. Now that we've seen what a potential Putin-Trump partnership may be like, what would a Putin and a Ukraine partnership turn out? Or a Trump and a Ukraine partnership be like if Putin were to allow Ukraine use this missile? That also means that NATO and the US now becomes part of the war. Having the US as its allies, does it mean that Ukraine has a much edge in this war?
Well, with the way that things are going and looking at North Korea with this millions and billions of people, manpower, access, and its potential missile capabilities and nuclear warheads, with that kind of support, and on some side, the Chinese government is also sympathetic to the plight of the Russian side, because they also do have an axe to grind with the United States, because they are supporting Taiwan, which is another bone of contention on some other side. So we're having a diversion and a shift in interest, I would say. But